everyone, welcome back to another retouching video in Photoshop with me, Sigourney from Sigourney Whitesell Studio. And today we're going to do a full image edit on what you see in front of you right now. We're going to take this existing image, which is straight out of camera, we're going to change the background to blue, and we're going to replace this white plinth with an acrylic plinth. So we tried on set to use this gradient background as this is the packaging colours. Doesn't quite work, we're not quite happy, so we want to change it back to the peptide calm blue. And for a lot of the beauty crock work we use acrylic plinths, but I just didn't have one that was big enough for this project, so we are going to change this white plinth for something that's acrylic, and it should end up looking something like this. So it's just something with a bit more dimension, has a little bit more quality to it. But we're going to go ahead and do the full edit today so you can follow through with me. So what I've done initially is I've done a background copy by dragging it down to the square with plus duplicate layer mask. And then we're going to go ahead and use our favourite spot healing tools to clean up the areas of product. So I'm going to use the remove tool and I'm going to just fix up some of these areas. I'm not too worried about the plinth right now because we will be removing this. So I'm just going to get rid of some of these details of dirt and scratches. And depending on how the sharpness can clean up the front of that first package, I might end up overlaying another frame to just help to add to the clarity. I don't think there's too much to clean up on here. So this image I tethered into Lightroom, and I have been doing a few new bits of retouching courses and stuff like that. So I've learned a few new tricks of what I am doing in my workflow. So instead of making all of the local and global adjustments in Lightroom, I'm now doing it purely in Photoshop for a bit more control. And if there's anything that I want to change, it's a lot easier to go back into. So with the products basically cleaned up, which I'm happy with, I'm going to right click on the background copy and convert it to a smart object. Okay, so now that's become a smart object. We're then going to go to filter, we're going to go to camera raw filter, and then we're going to start to make all of the adjustments as if you would if you were editing in Lightroom. It's going to come up. Here we go. So the reason I'm doing this, as I said, is because I can go back into this layer directly and you can get a bit more creative with it. You can play far more with all of the sliders, and the reason we've set up the layer as a smart object is because it will add a sort of filter layer to it, and you can go back into it whenever you want as long as you don't flatten it. And yeah, you can just really have some fun. So what I'm going to start off by doing is reducing the highlights, just take the edge off that brightness. I'm going to lift the shadows a little bit, add a bit of contrast, up the whites, play with the texture a little bit for that cleansing pad, dehaze it slightly, and then we can play with our curves in here as well. So it's all generally the same sort of adjustments I'd make in Lightroom. So it can just add a little bit more depth and pop in it. Probably a bit too much there. Fab. I'm just going to click OK. And then as you can see here, you've got your smart filter, and then underneath is the camera raw filter, and you can just click that on and off to see sort of difference it makes. The Beauty Crop isn't really a brand that uses a lot of contrast. It's a bit softer than some other edits. So we don't need to make too many adjustments. But now I have this layer filled with all of the local and global adjustments that I'm happy with. And we're basically just focusing on the 3 products on here. I'm not bothered about the plinth. I'm not bothered about background because we're going to be creating a mask to get rid of these. So with this mask, with this layer selected, I'm going to go to the object select tool and I'm just going to go over these 3 products. So using my pen tool, I'm just going to go back through and add these to the selection. So select no feather, add to selection. It's picked it up quite well. Again here, this one's gone a bit overboard. So I'm going to use my lasso tool here to just add, clicking the shift key, add back into the mask, same again. Just going to switch between lasso and pen tool depending on the shape that I need to create a mask for. So typically I'm not that great at using the pen tool. I use the curvature tool for most things because the pen tool confuses the hell out of me. It's definitely something that I am trying to get better at. I'm going to have a little bit of an issue with the colour casting here because we're going from green to blue, but that's okay. I have just missed a little bit of cleanup down this bottom corner, but again, that's fine. Okay, so now we have this mask selected, and I'm just going to, with that background copy selected, I'm going to click on the layer mask tool, and then that has created a mask for me. I'm just looking back into this. I'm not that happy with some of the colours, so I'm just going to go back into the camera raw filter and change some of those details. I'm going to go into the colour mixer. Sorry, color grading, and I'm just going to up the midtones slightly, and I'm going to bring down the saturation of the blue in those shadows because that's quite heavy. There we go, that feels a lot more aligned to the branding. And I'm also just going to take a quick look at what it'll be like if I play with the shadows and highlights. So sorry, I should have gone through that. Shadows and highlights is with the layer selected, image, adjustments, shadows and highlights. And then obviously because we've got this camera raw filter on there, it will add it as like a separate filter that you can turn on and off and change. So that's just lifting those shadows a little bit more, which I like actually. So I'm going to do that, but I'm just going to add a bit more to the mid-tone just to help pop a little bit more. Okay, so now we have a very, very plain image. If we click that back on, you can see the difference that's been made there. So now we're going to start looking at putting in the background. So I'm going to just click off this background layer and I'm going to go to the other one that I've worked on. So I've obviously already done this image previously, so I'm going to use the same background color, and I'm also going to carry across this gradient as well, but I'll talk you through it in the other screen. So I'm just selecting both, dragging it to my other file, clicking shift as I hold down and dropping it in. And I'm just going to drag that layer underneath there. And that sits pretty well, to be fair. I'm just going to move the gradient more central. And then this will play nicely when you're making the acrylic plinth, as it'll add some dimension so you can see through to the background. So we have this nice little setup here. It looks very bizarre. That's with that, and that's with the new background. So with the colour fill background, if I remove this, so this is just done by making a solid colour background. So in your adjustments panel, solid colour, and then click whatever colour you like. With that, I've then turned that into a smart filter itself and then gone to filter and noise and add noise to add back some grain in the background so it doesn't look completely fake. Then with the gradient in the background, I might show you how to do this actually. So I create a new layer by clicking the square with the plus in it. I then go to my ellipsis tool, which is here. And then with the fill layer to white, we'll remove the stroke. And then I'm just going to hold down shift so we can build a perfect circle. And then that's going to generate that. Just click enter. And then I'm just going to drag this by doing Control and T for transform and drag that where I want that to be. So about there. Click enter again. We're going to turn this into a smart object. I'm a big fan of smart objects because you can constantly make changes. It will increase the file size that you have, but it just helps it with being able to go back and forward into things and you don't have to recreate things again. So that ellipsis now, or the ellipse is now the a smart layer. We're going to go up to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and then we're at 562.5 pixels here. You can change sort of how blurred you want the gradient to be. Looks quite nice actually at 447. So we can preview it and not, and then click OK. And as we have this smart filter on, I can now click on and off that to show what it looks like with, and I can also go back into this layer and change it if I'm not completely happy. But I'm going to click cancel on that, and I want it to match the last one, so I'm going to do that. There we go. So now we're going to build in the fakey acrylic plinth. So I'm going to turn off that layer. I'm going to delete that one that I've just made. I'm going to turn off the gradient. We're going to turn off the background fill and turn back on the old layer. So what I'm going to do here is use my polygonal lasso tool, and I'm just going to trace the outer angle or outer lines of the existing white plinth. I'm actually going to cut it down on one side after we've done this, but here we go. So I'm just going to attach it like that, and then from this point I'm going to click my shift key to add a plus to it, and then I'm just going to hold down the shift key as well, and that creates like a solid line. So we're going to do it like that so it looks a bit straighter. And then what I'm simply going to do is I'm going to create a new adjustment layer, solid colour, and then I'm going to just colour it one of these blues for now. We can perfect that in a minute. So now we have the outline of our block. So what I'm instantly going to do is I'm going to cut this down because I'm not quite happy with how much extra edge there is on this side. So I'm going to click on this layer mask, click a point that I want to edit it down to, click with the polygonal lasso tool, hold down shift key so it creates a straight line, go around this edge, and then I'm just going to delete that from the layer mask. So now we're working purely with a plinth this size. So with the easiest thing to do here, because I'm going to create different faces on this block, so I'm going to hold my control key and hit this layer mask key so it selects that block. Using my lasso tool again, I'm going to hit this center point wherever the tip of or the edge of the plinth would be, and I'm just going to select that, and then we're going to work on this face first. So if we go back to this image that I've already done, we've got to sort of get the perspective right. So this is the top corner of the plinth, one corner, and then another corner back here. So we've got to build this ledge, and if you have, the best way to do it is having like an acrylic plinth in front of you if you've got one. You'll see that holding it at a similar angle to the way you've shot it will give you different panels and different colours. It's not just flat planes or faces, it's literally got multiple dimensions and different patterns within it, which is why I've got these sort of lines here and here. So if we go back here, I'm going to create another slightly darker face. Just colour pick that to there. That looks good. And then we're going to create two more darker elements on this side and this side. So we're just kind of making up where these faces would all sort of intersect. So I'm going to go back to the full layer, click that one, click Control on the layer mask. That's going to select it all. And then I'm going to just delete with the Shift key to make a straight line from there. And then probably get rid of it to about there. So now I've got two edges on there. And then again, adjustment mask, solid colour, and I'm going to make one even slightly darker. Okay, so now you can start to see sort of the dimensions. You can imagine what it would look like if you were looking at this clear acrylic plinth. But because we're shooting from a slightly lower angle to make the products a bit more hero, we need to just add in the extra element of being able to see that plane from what they're sitting on. So again, we're going to select with the control key around the mask that covers the whole plinth, lasso tool. With the Alt key selected, we're going to just draw sort of a bit of a elongated diamond shape, maybe a little bit deeper, just so it feels a bit more like it's got a bit more dimension. And then again, I've done it in this one, sort of mid-tone colour. So solid colour again, and something probably about there. It looks a bit bizarre right now, but we're going to create some opacity with everything. The final thing I need to do with this one is just create this edge. So on most acrylic plinths, there is like a slight edge at the top of them. So I'm going to just add in another darker line. Again, I'm going to select that full plinth with the control on the layer mask. use my lasso tool, going to then click on the Alt key so we can remove the rest of the plinth, go to that corner, and then we're creating like a little mini strip. So as you can see, we've now got a very small strip here. Going to go back to adjustments there, solid colour, and once again just make something slightly darker. It's not the right colour. Something a bit like that maybe. I'm just going to go back in and perfect this so I can match the colours that we've got in here. And then with this group or folder selected, I'm going to go to the opacity and I'm just going to click 75%. And as you can see, that has started to bring some of the detail from that gradient behind through. So the more we reduce it down, the more background you can see. If we put it all the way back up, there is less. So I'm just trying to find that middle ground. So I'm going to go into each individual layer. I am going to change the colour of these because I feel like they're a bit too blue compared to the sort of teal effect of this one. So I'm going to use these edges. Just going to quickly colour pick some of these areas and add that back into these. Let's double check. Just make that a bit darker. There we go. And then this top one. There's no real science to it. It's sort of artistic and what you want to make of it. Fill 9. Let's change that one to that colour, probably a bit darker. A bit darker. Maybe there. And then this one is still quite dark in comparison. So that would be this one. Has that made the difference? There we go. There we go. So it feels a bit more aligned with the other one now. So it's just a case of going through and playing with each individual face. So this one is that one. So I'm going to reduce this individually down, play with the opacity a bit more. Probably play with these ones too. This one's at 100%, but I might just make this slightly darker. Slightly lighter. Might actually remove the underneath of this one, so we keep that one. And just remove it from this bottom layer. Add that back in, and then these ones make those a bit darker. So it really does help when you've got the plinths in front of you so you can sort of check on level of detail you're seeing. And this one needs changed as well. It needs to be, oh, that's probably a bit better. There we go. So yeah, they're sort of looking quite similar now. So what we will then go ahead and do is close that panel. Then I'm going to duplicate the group. As I said, I do a lot of multiplying the layers. I do a lot of duplicating things just to make sure that if I need to go back into it, I don't ruin anything. I'm going to convert that to a smart object. So it's going to create a panel with this group as a smart layer. Then I'm going to filter, noise, add noise, and then it's going to add back some noise and detail into the image so it doesn't look too strange. So yeah, that's how I have built the plinth and popped in the blue background. The final step for me would be to add a high pass layer to the products. So that is a sharpening layer, which I think I've done in another video. So I'm going to go to my actions panel, click high pass and play. That should sharpen up and tidy up this top layer. There we go. It's just sharpened everything up and added some more crispness to it. And then I'm just going to probably add a adjustment layer, perhaps with some curves. Go to a preset for linear contrast, and that just gives it that extra bit as well. I'm not too happy with this extremely bright part on the cleansing pad, so I'm just going to quickly do an adjustment mask for the top of that. So with the cleansing pads selected, adjustment layer, I'm going to go to levels. I'm just going to bring down the brightness of that, go back into the the mask, sorry, and I'm going to paint back out the lower parts because that's made it too dark now. Oops. Just make sure my brush is soft brush. Flow is about 28. Just, oops, wrong one. Click X to reverse, and then just sort of balance that out. So again, just blending out that detail has allowed me to pull back some of the highlights and details just by adding that adjustment layer. So yeah, I think apart from this bit, I'm just going to go back into this lower bit and clean that up. So I'm actually going to remove my high pass filter, and I'm going to double click into the smart object, which I made when I was doing the raw camera filter adjustment, and I'm going to go and clean up the bottom of this using the healing brush tool. Okay, then I'm just going to click Control and S for save, and then that'll save the PSB file, and then it will re-add it into this. So hopefully once that's saved, this will disappear. And then the final thing we need to do is just adjust this colour that's come through from the green background. So the colour casting that's come through from the original background, we just need to change that to blue and sort of sort this bit out as well. So that's now removed that in the second adjustment layer. I'm going to close that window, and then, as I said, I'm just going to click back onto that mask. I'm just going to focus on this edge. So delete everything else out. Actually, still a little bit of colour casting there. And then what I'm going to do is go into create a new adjustment layer. We're going to do hue and saturation. And then I'm going to click on this area here, sort of where it's going to be a bit more yellowy, I imagine. It's going to pick up the yellows. Okay, it's picking it up as cyan. So then we're going to go to the slider and just start to figure out. Actually, do you know what we're going to do? We're going to not do hue and saturation. We are going to do, I think we're going to do a solid colour. And then I'm going to click on this bit here. And then I'm going to do a colour adjustment. And then I'm just going to blend this back out because now it has sort of filled in those areas. Don't know what it's done for that bit yet. Yeah, that's fine. So I'm going to click back into this mask with a brush tool, and I'm just going to paint out anything that looks like it doesn't belong there. So brush tool. So paint back out this, because I think that was, actually that's quite a little bit. Let's do that. Sort of blend that in. And then there's still this area here, which I sort of want to paint back in to be blue. There we go. So there we go. Just making sure. Actually, what does that look like? I think I prefer that without the really saturated blue in there. There we go. Looks a bit more natural. Yeah, that looks nice. And then I'm just going to fix this edge here. So I think that looks a bit better. Just for the edge though, we'll paint back into the cloth itself. And then just this underside, I'm going to paint that in blue as well. Where does that? That's too much. Actually, I think it looks quite nice with the. This is actually quite close to what I'm seeing in front of me rather than being too pale. Yeah. If I got that one, just going to quickly go on there. And then finally, I'm just going to remove that top lip because I'm not that happy with that one. Just remove that from the layer. There we go. And then finally, just adding back in that high pass filter. Fab. So just to show you the beginning and end, I'm going to add all that to a folder. Click that back on. So there you go. That's how we've gone from something completely different to something having an acrylic plinth with a gradient blue background with the colours amended for the colour casting and everything. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that, and I hope this helps. I hope you can get some use out of doing something a bit creative. You can always have a play around. Just don't be afraid that if you don't have something in your studio that you desperately need, you can always recreate it. You just got to be mindful of sort of lighting and understanding perspectives and that kind of thing. So yeah, bit of an interesting one, but I hope this helps, guys. I'll see you on the next one.